we're going to call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please note those in attendance?
All will be noted.
Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's jump into item 2A, minutes of the regular city council meeting on August 14th, 2024. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Item 2B, minutes of the city council work session on August 20th, 2024. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm gonna abstain, I wasn't there.
All right, one abstention. Motion.
Minutes are good or not, I have no idea, no reference point.
Fair enough. All right.
Because you weren't there, Mr. Walsh, they were seconds, not minutes or hours. Just kidding.
Burn. All right, so the motion carries and those minutes are approved with one noted abstention from Mr. Walsh. Item 3, adoption of the agenda. Are there any corrections or amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have an agenda. Item 4, consent agenda. It's light, only one item. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. All right, item 5, visitors and presentations. We have a Community Development Department biannual report. Mr. Lindahl, whenever you're ready.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you. The item before you, again, is the Community Development Biannual Report. So twice a year, the Community Development Department reports on activity in our department. We break down that data into 3 different kind of divisions of the department or parts of the department. Building activity and building permit data, code enforcement data, and then zoning activity data. And there's information included in your report with that. I would just note for you that right before the meeting, I did hand out an updated table for the code enforcement information. While the analysis in the staff report is based on the correct information, the table that got into the packet was incomplete. So I just wanted to make sure you had a full data, and I'll have that for you up on the screen here in a second. But when we do the biannual report, at this point in the year, we report on activity between January and June, and we compare it to the previous year to give you some context. Before we do that, what I wanted to do was to start with some of the data that we showed you for the annual report at the end of 2023, just to show you kind of the broader context that can kind of explain where we're going with this snapshot of data in just the first half of this year. So this shows building department data, specifically building permits, from 2010 out to 2023. And so this is the exact table that you saw at the for our end of the year 2023 report that was presented to the council back in February. And so what you can see from this data is that overall there's a trend from 2010 up until 2022 where there's a steady increase in activity in the building inspection department. There's a general trend in 2023 that activity is decreasing. And we'll be able to see that here, and also total valuations of permit. We're seeing a substantial increase, from 2009 on this chart up to 2023, and kind of plateauing for valuations. And then if you look at fees collected with that same building permit data, you see, again, a steady increase from 2009 all the way out to 2023, and then the beginning of kind of a decrease in activity. And what I'd highlight for you in this data, again, is the overall projection trend that have been going up in pretty substantially for the last 14 or 15 years. Even though we're seeing a decrease in activity now, I would suggest that that's more of a return to normal rather than, kind of a downward trend. And in the last few years, the Barnum project, the Lochner project, the school districts projects throughout the community have represented it. And quite honestly, a few storms that came through, even worse than the one last night, that caused a lot of roof repairs in 2022, which presented a lot of activity in our department that just wasn't typical, okay? So while you'll see decreases coming, I really think it's more a return to kind of the normal rather than, a downward trend. So I don't have a table for you specifically for building permit data because I wanted to show you the bigger picture, but in your report, you can see for building permit data, the total number of permits when comparing just the first half of 2024 with the first half of 2023, saw a decrease by 25%. If you look at total valuations, those were down by 37%, and total permit fees were down by 34%, similarly. And again, that's just comparing first half of '24 with first half of '23. Now, if you look at the data for code enforcement, for example, and again, this is the table that I just handed out to you, you'll see that generally this table is organized, or this data is organized in total numbers of cases and then broken down by either complaint activity or proactive code enforcement, and then also broken down by ward. So what you see here overall for code enforcement is that the total number of cases and complaint-based cases were down slightly, but proactive cases were up slightly. So really, from '23 to '24, we're in very similar total numbers of cases for the code enforcement position. And just to take a closer look to see, in the first half of 2024, we saw a significant increase, and the biggest part of our pie here is weed kind of complaints, and I think that's directly related to the spring that we had that was very wet and everybody's grass was growing a lot. If you look at then broken down by ward, you'll see that the fewest number of cases was in Ward 4 at 15%. Wards 1, 2, and 5 had nearly equal kind of complaint levels, but Ward 3 saw the highest levels at 25%. Now moving on to the zoning activity, you'll see that there were slight decreases in total activities from '23 to 2024. I'm sorry, I should explain this chart a little bit. You can see that the brown color is the first half of 2024. The yellow color is the second half of 2023, and then the totals for 2023 is a general comparison. And really, we saw decreases in cases or in this activity with the exception of the permitting review that happens with zoning permits or building permits, and so that's kind of related to what's happening in the building inspection data. So again, while I'd say that's part of an overall, the overall trend is kind of down, it's really returning to what I think was a normal level of activity, more typical of what we've seen historically in White Bear Lake. And so with that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindahl, for the report. I don't have any questions, except to just say thank you for a detailed report. Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Lindahl? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, can you remind us, staffing-wise, have we added to the code enforcement staff, and like where would it fall on that growth chart? It seems to me we have a position or a half a position, and sort of when. And
So the Community Development Department, Councilmember Walsh, members of the council, the Community Development Department has historically included a code enforcement position. When I started in 2022, for about 9 months of that time period or so, in the kind of the middle part of second half of that year and the beginning part of 2023, the code enforcement position was vacant as we did some staff rearranging. So in the time that I was here, really from almost immediately at the time that I started in the spring of 2022 to basically the beginning of '24, our department was short-staffed in some way. Either a building inspector, the code enforcement position, or the rental inspector. And there was also some movement internally to kind of fill those spots that kind of created that sequencing or chain of staffing. But we have had the code enforcement position now fully staffed for almost exactly 1 year. So that data, I think, represents a more consistent example of what the capacity of the department is.
Okay, so I'm not remembering growth, I'm remembering filling staff, open staff positions. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Council, any other questions? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Lindahl, looking at the long-term trends that you were referencing, I completely agree with your assessment on Lochner and Barnum, on storms. What you didn't mention, and what I was curious in the data, you drew a regression line, a pretty much straight line. My sense, and I'm just curious to see where this goes, we didn't talk about any of the pandemic home improvement projects that were done. Well done, well documented, tons of it going on all over the place. So looking at that chart, 21, 22, 23 in terms of, anyway, I'll be curious to find out what norm are we going back to? Are we going back to a pre-pandemic norm, or are we going back to something else? And so just an observation and a curiosity. Do you have any perspectives on that?
So, Mayor, members of the council, I would say it's too early from the data that we have to tell exactly what level we're going back to. But you certainly can see in like just the sheer permit number level here that there's a dip in, there's really a progression line really consistently going up, but you also see a slight, you see a dip in 19, 20, and 21 of permits before things kind of start to go back up again. So while I think there were certainly home improvement projects that happened throughout White Bear Lake, we see a little bit of a dip here in that pandemic time period, just generally.
Okay. We'll watch and see.
Okay?
Any final questions from the council? All right. Thank you, Mr. Lindahl. Item 6, public hearing. We have nothing scheduled. Item 7, unfinished business. We have a second reading of an ordinance amending the zoning code as it relates to off-sale liquor. Mr. Lindahl, whenever you're ready for this one.
Mayor, members of the council, again, as you mentioned, this is a second reading of an ordinance related to off-sale liquor uses in the B5 Central Business District. So the request is being made by Hardik Patel, and his proposal is necessary because he would like to relocate his liquor store from one spot along 3rd Street to another just across the street. The amendment would be to the B5 Central Business District and allow off-sale liquor as a permitted use as staff is recommending. In the lead up to this in the public comment regarding this application, we saw staff received 2 emails supporting the request. The Planning Commission held their required public hearing on the rezoning back at their July 29 meeting. That produced one resident in support of the application and another opposed to the request. The City Council held the first reading of this item, as you may remember, at your last meeting back on the 14th of August. The Planning Commission and staff are recommending approval, and specifically in this case, we're recommending approval as a permitted use. There were 3 options that we did look at, that we did talk about a little bit more during the first reading. We did settle on staff's recommendation, again, also supported by the Planning Commission, is allowing liquor stores as a permitted use with certain conditions. Those include that the property would be located, again, in the B5 Central Business District, but it must be located along Highway 61, located along 3rd or 4th Street, and a parcel subject to a maximum size, which leads to the site that the applicant is interested in. And so in this case, Staff, again, is recommending approval as a permitted use, subject to the terms that we just outlined that's included in the ordinance, included in your packet. After conducting a second reading of the ordinance, staff recommends adoption of that ordinance as presented. Should the council approve or adopt the ordinance, the next step would be to consider a resolution to publish the ordinance by title and summary, and that resolution is also included in your packet. And with that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindahl. Questions on this, council? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you. So, Mr. Lindahl, how long is this business? Okay, we are being asked to make this at the request of a specific business. How long has this business been in White Bear Lake, and how long has it been owned by its current ownership?
Mayor, members of the council, it's my understanding that it's been in this particular location for at least 2 decades, but the applicant is in the office and could, or excuse me, is in the audience and could provide us a detailed answer to that.
Well, okay, I'll make my point. The business in question was grandfathered in when many years ago, and I believe it was prior to the current owner taking ownership. So we have, by government action, given them a limited, but nonetheless not insignificant monopoly to a single business. We've limited essentially to one liquor store in the downtown area. I don't think that's good economics, and I don't think it's good government policy. Perhaps, if we wanted to follow that language, there are friends of mine of Mediterranean descent who suggest that access to really good olive oil is close to an addiction, and therefore we might consider limiting like only one oil company in downtown, or pick your favorite whatever enterprise, maybe only one beauty salon, or maybe only ... Now, I'm not opposed to this business relocating. I'm not opposed to giving them access to a permit. I'm opposed to granting and perpetuating a monopoly, but through government action. And that's what we're doing. And that monopoly creates a preferential value to that property in that they are able to capture sales because they don't have competition from those who might be already in that area seeking to purchase, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not in favor of a proposal that permits with conditions, especially with the narrow conditions that very clearly are tailored to meet a particular business and a particular location. I'm fine if we permit it throughout the B5. I think that's fair game. That's open to competition. If we have other kinds of conditions besides the locational things, I'm fine with that too. But I'm not okay with specifying and grandfathering in and perpetuating a practice that gives advantage through government action. And I just think that's bad economics and bad policy. Do you have any response?
Mayor, members of the council, I'm sorry if I don't have a response, I guess,
Okay.
unless you have a question.
Yeah. Well, the question is, okay, so the question might be, Mr. Lindahl, why would we seek to use our powers in this way? What is the advantage? What is the public good that's created by limiting access in the way that we are doing it?
So, Mayor, members of the council, I would say another way to look at the city's current zoning standards as we relate to off-sale liquor in downtown is that they are prohibited, and that occurred at some point when there was an existing liquor store. And so the policy decision presumably was made with the understanding that that particular use would be grandfathered in and allowed to continue until that business chose to no longer operate, which is perpetuated by this policy, okay? The standards to review an ordinance change that are outlined in your packet go into greater detail about the rationale about why staff recommended the policy that it did. And if you do look at those criteria, it does relate to the purpose and intent of the downtown district to allow commercial and retail activity, and that while we specifically look at off-sale liquor stores as a different kind of retail activity, it does generally fit into the comprehensive plan guidance for downtown as commercial and retail activity, okay? The purpose and intent of the downtown zoning district also suggests that the zoning should be designed to limit impacts of downtown uses on the surrounding neighborhood to downtown. And so under that idea, focusing these more transient-oriented users on Highway 61 away from the residential areas is consistent with that. So there are several rationales in here related to recommending this use with these criteria that staff believes goes beyond the perspective that you outlined.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Councilmember Edberg, I'm tracking with you, I think, philosophically. I can't offer an argument why we would let one off-sale liquor in the downtown area, not more. I guess my thought is that's a zoning question. We have this zoning work group that's working right now, and I guess my thought would be we grandfather this one in today because it's status quo, except they move across the street. And then I'm willing to really seriously consider this as a zoning question globally for the entire city as we look at, because we're doing that. We're in that middle of that process, right? I'd say middle of that process, maybe even past the middle of that process.
2/3 of the way.
2/3 of the way done with that process. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. I think I'm with you philosophically, and I'm just gonna preempt a possible hypocrisy here, because I'm gonna in 6 months or so we're gonna be talking about retail marijuana shops, and I'm gonna have a different view, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I just want to I'll state that now, so somebody doesn't say, well, you wanted unlimited liquor stores in downtown. But yes, I'm okay with. I'm gonna treat them differently. But I guess my thought would be let's wait and do the zoning when we're doing the zoning comprehensively, and I think I'll be with you philosophically on. Like we discussed this 2 weeks ago, why, what is the rationale? What is the state purpose for not having liquor stores, retail liquor stores downtown? I'm not sure that's a compelling enough argument that's been made, so I'm kind of with you, but not today. And just to change the subject, I have another question. It's just there's one line in the memo about changing the building facade to include the addition of glass windows. Really, we're talking about the zoning question, really. I mean, if they don't need to come to us for any other reason in terms of renovations or use or anything like that, I mean, that's fine, unless they want a variance or something, we might not get into that. But it seems like we should maybe know more about that. I mean, as I'm thinking about this, I mean, is the parking different, just moving it from here to there? That building seems to me very small as I look at it, but maybe it's enough, maybe it's big enough to handle. Is there going to be an addition to the building? We just have the one line in here about what's going to change in the building and the parking lot.
So, Mayor, members of the council, the staff report really didn't go into the details of what the applicant may do to renovate the building, because really it's focused on the use and the zoning right now. And that's the next step that really can't proceed until this is either adopted or decided by the city, okay? Now, I know that the business owner has been making plans, talking with our building department staff, and doing some renovations that could be done just generally in a retail kinds of buildings to try and kind of prime his move, if he can do that, understanding that that nothing is for sure until the council acts on this. But really, the information that was included in your staff report related to kind of exterior improvements was a response from the business owner to one of the concerns raised during the public hearing at the Planning Commission, that the building currently doesn't have the same aesthetic as kind of the rest of the downtown. And the applicant then, or excuse me, the business owner, made some comments during the public hearing that he intends to do some exterior improvements, but he just hasn't gotten to that step for the actual building permit process. Now, with that, there's nothing in here that changes any of the zoning standards for exterior materials or parking or anything else in downtown. This is just related to the use. And so this site, if they would make any improvements to parking or exterior materials or any other parts of the building, they're subject to the same zoning standards for any other building in downtown, and that would be an administrative building permit, assuming that those all meet the standards of downtown.
Okay, thanks, that's helpful.
Councilmember Hughes.
When you guys go through the zoning process, are you intending to make any changes as far as what constitutes a B5? My question is really because B5 right now is just on the other side of 61. But if you include kind of up to Cup and Cone and Ingredients and some of the other storefronts along there, which in my head I include, it also includes a liquor store. So kind of to Kevin's point, or to Councilmember Edberg's point, there is competition downtown. It's just not B5 to B5. But I hear you, too. I'm not really interested in sitting here at this dais and creating business winners and losers. And so my question is, does that change? Do the boundaries of what is downtown and how we look at downtown change as you go through the zoning process?
So, Mayor, Councilmember Hughes, rest of the council, there's a long answer to that question, as we've been working on the zoning update for about a year now. The shorter answer is there is a draft zoning map that is the working draft for the Community Advisory Committee at this point. It has different zoning classifications and names, and it takes a little bit of a different approach. So there isn't an apple for an apple relationship to what's considered downtown now and what may be considered downtown on the future map. And that's partly because the zones become a little bit more detailed. And the simplest answer to why they become more detailed is we're trying to protect the retail core and the synergy and focusing those activities under a certain land use category or actually zoning category. And then what's really now the greater downtown area that has more office and could have some residential uses in it kind of has another zoning category. Okay, so what you can think of as downtown now really kind of gets divided, or is proposed to be divided into two different zones, okay? So that's the quickest answer. More specifically to your question, what is downtown and related to the retail areas of it is proposed at this point to cross now 61 down 4th Street a few blocks. To kind of include Cup and Cone and the commercial activity that's or the commercial uses that are at Bald Eagle and 4th. And so, and really try to link that corridor with downtown as it continues on the other side of 4th. That's the concept right now. The council will have a lot more chance to review and talk about that as we try to get you a final working draft to refine that.
Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to acknowledge, Mr. Lindahl, you and staff did make the argument about the desire to locate certain businesses towards 61. I would note that all of that strikes me as a stretch. Had the current operator were not in a position to be forced to move and forced to relocate, I don't recall a single conversation about any requirements or shifts in requirements that move certain kinds of activities to Highway 61. We've never had that conversation. For me, it's clearly a response that tries to retain a business in downtown, which is good, but we're doing it using a structure and an analysis that doesn't hold up in my way of thinking. So I acknowledge the argument was made. I did read it. I'm not buying it, but that's okay. I would like to ask, Member Walsh rightly notes that we are in the middle of this zoning conversation. If we, regardless perhaps of what decision we make tonight, how would his suggestion that we deal with this via the zoning conversation, how does the ordinance mesh with zoning, and process for how we might implement the suggestion that he's making? What would that pathway look like?
Mayor, members of the council, so the new, to try and boil this down into in a managed response here right now, but still inform your question. So the zoning ordinance, as we're drafting it, really, council members Walsh and Edberg will understand this more because they're participating in the process, but just for the whole council's benefit. Right now, we are reviewing the zoning, the updated zoning, recommended zoning, with the community advisory community in 3 sections, or what we're calling modules. So module 1 is what we've been talking about for the last 2 meetings. And this information is all on the city's website for the public who may want to look at this. And Module 1 presents a draft zoning map, so it shows districts and names and where they're located throughout the city, and then it provides basic zoning standards and uses within those districts to accompany that map. The first meeting, we focused on residential areas, which are substantially trying to stay the same, and then we looked at mixed-use areas that could come in as parts of the city from downtown. And so in each of the zones, and well, as part of Module 1, there is a use table. And so there's a table that's about 1.5 pages that lists each of the zones that are proposed on the new map and the uses, residential, commercial, industrial, manufacturing, public and institutional, in categories, and proposes the locations of those uses, each of those specific uses in specific zones. So there will be, while we've been talking at the kind of higher level at this point with Module 1, with looking at zones and uses, the CAC and the community, and eventually the Planning Commission and Council will have the opportunity to talk about what specific uses they would like in those draft zones. So you could talk about liquor stores and what zones they want to go. You could talk about retail and which zones you want them to go to, or auto repair and which zones you want them to go to. You could talk about any particular use in any particular zone. And while there's, I think, a more kind of a higher priority list on staffs, the group can talk about any one of those, or any of the zones, or uses, excuse me.
And so with that conversation incubated at the study and discussion levels now matured through Planning Commission and up to the council, would that zoning ordinance, once completed, overrule? How would we accommodate, okay, I'm making this up because we haven't had the conversation. But if Member Walsh and I were to say, convince a number of members of the advisory committee that the zoning ordinance for downtown should allow multiple sites, we remove the grandfathering effect, or we modify the conditions that we might adopt in the zoning. Do we have that authority? Is that a part of that process, or is that not likely to be a useful and reasonable, productive conversation in that process?
Mayor, members of the council, really, we're doing a comprehensive review and update of the zoning code, so really, anything's fair game at this point. We're starting from a perspective of trying to ground the conversation in, okay, what's in our current code, what's working, what's maybe a challenge, and then looking at our comprehensive plan about what the future goals for the city are, and how do we adjust the zoning ordinance to reflect the comprehensive plan. But and so while we've tried to provide a context to have, because, if we just, opened everything up, I think that's a difficult conversation to have. So we've tried to provide some framework, and that's what the development framework document did last spring, about what areas we were going to focus in on. But certainly, the committee is made up of council members, planning commissioners, and other people that represent various development interests throughout the community. And we really wanted to have that diversity. The mayor directed us to have that diversity so we could bring different perspectives. And I think at any point, any particular member could raise a concern or a change that they want to make, and that certainly could be related to any specific use, including liquor stores.
So let me share what my thinking and rationale is, and it's mainly for you, Councilmember Edberg, because I think it's maybe helpful to know what my thinking was. Because philosophically, I'm with you on what seems like a very one-off, almost kind of specialized carve-out for one specific issue that came up, and we don't want to pass ordinances for those onesie-twosie things. So I get that in principle. Here's how I looked at this. And why I supported the permitted use with conditions. The timing of this is unfortunate because this would have been scooped up in the overall zoning overhaul. But we have a longstanding business, or at least location, and the devil's in the details. They want to move it right across the street. So my heartburn that I got, the same that you did, for what are the broader ramification, was assuaged by knowing that we're going to be able to address those exact issues in very short order, hopefully, with the broader zoning code update, of which I'm completely open to. Do we want to just open up all of B5 to allow liquor stores to be there so that we're not creating a monopoly? I think that's a fair point, and I'm open to that. The other thing that we haven't discussed in real detail here is we're still working through what cannabis is going to look like, and the fact that cannabis is dovetailing off of liquor sales and where liquor licenses are held, and that's the broader issue. So to my point is, if you said, well, if we're going to open up the ordinance, why don't we just expand it to all of B5 and allow all liquor stores to go in there and create a free market environment down there? I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that, but for that can have unintended consequences when it comes to legislating cannabis and how that's going to work, how we want to get our arms around where we want cannabis to be, because they are two very different things. So that's why I support this, because it doesn't trouble me knowing that it's a very, very minor change moving across the street, something that has historically been there, and we're going to scoop up the broader issue very, very soon. So I just looked at it more practically in terms of what is today versus more of the philosophical thought, which I think is a good point. I'm confident that you'll raise that again as we have discussions about the broader zoning code, because we're opening up to a blank sheet of paper and really starting over, and this is going to get scooped up. And my understanding was, as Mr. Lindahl just addressed, if we don't like what this creates, we're going to fix that and clean it up. And the only thing that we're stuck with at that point is, yes, that liquor store is going to be able to stay there, but that doesn't mean more can't pop up, or we can't create that competitive environment that I think that you're looking for. So I don't know if that helps get you home, but that's at least where my thinking is. So any other thoughts or comments on this?
I'll move approval of the resolution.
All right, I have a motion. We have the ordinance first, so is that a
Ordinance
motion for the
okay.
ordinance? Or do I have a second on the motion to approve the ordinance?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. All right, motion carries by a vote of 4-1. My ears are not deceiving me, and that ordinance is approved. We have an accompanying resolution approving publication of the ordinance. I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. The resolution is approved. All right, item 8, new business, off-sale liquor, tobacco, and edible cannabinoid products business license for United WBL LLC. This is more or less a housekeeping matter based on what we just passed. The liquor license has to move across the street, but Ms. Longendijk, if you have anything you'd like to add to that, that's the license that's before us.
That is correct, Mayor and members of the council. This would typically be under the consent agenda. There's nothing in particularly special about this item other than it was contingent on the zoning text amendment, which you just approved.
Very good.
Move approval.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The license is approved. All right, item 9 under discussion. On-sale liquor sales extension. Ms. Crawford.
Members of the council, chapters 1001 and 1002 are the city's ordinances for regulating the sale of alcohol. These ordinances are not as descriptive as some of our comparable city ordinances, and some provisions actually currently do not align with Minnesota state statutes. Therefore, the city council, staff, and the city attorney have been discussing potentially amending the liquor ordinance at work sessions last year and earlier this year. However, an ordinance, just to be clear, clarify for anybody here, an ordinance is not being brought forward for formal consideration at a meeting tonight. At a work session on July 23rd, 2024, council and staff discussed the possibility of no longer allowing liquor sales after 1 a.m. due to concerns of public safety. So while there's a strong desire to improve public safety, obviously there would be an impact to 4 business owners or businesses that have active permits to sell intoxicating liquor until 2 a.m. in White Bear Lake. Therefore, the mayor and the city council requested direct feedback from liquor license establishment owners prior to considering any amendment to the ordinance. So staff was directed, and we did send a letter to all of our liquor license establishment owners, inviting them to the city council meeting tonight to provide feedback to the city council regarding that matter. And we did also invite them to meet with city staff if they wanted to discuss the matter. City staff did meet with 2 of the 4 business owners. One of the business owners was not able to be here tonight, so he did send an email with his thoughts, and that was distributed to the city council today as well. But I believe we do have 3 business owners here in the audience. Should you wish to hear from them, Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. So I want to kind of set the stage a little further, and Ms. Crawford did a good job kind of giving a little bit of the history, because I think there's been some misconception as to kind of where we're at. So I consider us still very much in the fact-gathering phase. There's no action item before us tonight. There's no proposed ordinance that's before us tonight. And I think that's maybe been miscommunicated by various outlets. That's why we don't have a formal public hearing tonight, because we have public hearings when we're looking to do first and second readings of ordinances and we're further along in the process. We're not there. I also want to say that staff, and I think members of the council did a good job making themselves available early on, because we realized how sensitive an issue this is for, while it's only 4, it's still a sensitive issue for at least 4 businesses in the community. So where we're at tonight is presenting those relevant stakeholders with an opportunity to be heard to help inform us before we even bring an ordinance. So this is your chance to say, good, bad, or otherwise, why bars should continue to be open until 2, or conversely, it's your right to say we think they should be closed at 1. But right now, it's solely open to on-sale liquor license holders, because you're the most relevant stakeholders. So I want to underscore that, because I think I speak for the whole council, and they can correct me later if they disagree. Everyone has looked at this as a very sensitive issue, and we're trying to weigh very real concerns from law enforcement, which I think everybody on the dais takes seriously, and also wanting to facilitate and allow small businesses to operate with as much autonomy as possible. So those are the two things that we're melding together, and why we are very much slow walking this and trying to gather as much information as we can. So with that, anyone that would like to speak to this issue that is a liquor license holder can do so now. And there's no particular order. You can step up to the podium. Please give me your name, address, and the business that you are speaking on behalf of. That would be great. Thank you.
Hi, I am Angie Arrett. Hi, Mr. Mayor and City Council members and White Bear Lake citizens. I'm Angie Arrett. I work at the White Bear Bar. In regard to the 1 a.m. rollback, I'm here to kind of give you my viewpoint as someone who works these hours and can be directly impacted by these decisions. I've been employed at the White Bear Bar for 13 years, and in that time, I've created relationships with employees and owners from other bars to communicate and help trespass any patrons who have caused problems in our establishments, to help drive down issues in our community as a whole. We try to be proactive by engaging police when we feel a situation may escalate, so we don't end up being reactive if the situation does happen. For the safety of our customers and staff, we have security, cameras, take annual liquor awareness training, and despite these precautions in place, sometimes issues can still arise, as they can happen anywhere. Opting to reduce these hours would not only impact the livelihood of many White Bear Lake service industry employees, it would also create unknown losses for White Bear Lake Hockey Charitable Gambling and any other charities that are involved with any other establishments. Punishing us all for actions of a few seems short-sighted and unjust. Thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Go ahead.
Great. Hi, everyone. Just real quick way I get my notes out so I don't forget anything. I'm not one of the bar owners, but I am Eric Johnson. I'm the president of the White Bear Lake Youth Hockey Association. So I just wanted to talk through how this kind of impacts us. So we partner with two of the bars that are in question that stay open until 2. That would be White Bear Bar and Docks Landing. Just for some context, we have 850 kids that skate in our Youth Hockey Association. 3 of them are mine. But every year for the last few years, as I've been treasurer and now president, we take gambling funds that are generated from these businesses. And this year, every skater gets 20% off from their registration fees. Hockey is really expensive, so if you look at that, the majority of our skaters get $350 off every year for this. So it's roughly somewhere between $250,000 or a little bit more that we put right from the charitable gambling that's raised. We have 5 locations in White Bear and Badness Heights, but 2 in question are, again, White Bear Bar and Docks Landing. When we look at that, we don't just give that money to the skaters. We also do what's called the Rob Son Fund. So if there are any family that has a child that wants to skate in White Bear and they're facing financial difficulties or their family's going through a health issue, it could be cancer or something else, we use funds from charitable gambling to pay and offset all their hockey fees. Something else I just want to say is, I don't have exact numbers, but we know when we look at those locations that do charitable gambling, it's the weekends and towards the end of the night when most people are playing charitable gambling. And I know that we have some locations that are on a border where if we impact, let's say, Docks Landing, and I don't want to speak for Dock, but we know just south of there are locations that stay open until 2, so people just won't go there and do charitable gambling if they can go just a block south and they stay open until 2 and they'll do their charitable gambling there, because that's kind of how it goes. Just my 2 cents on chiming in why I think it's important that it just doesn't affect which is really important, right? Their staff and all that, but it's also impacts the kids that skate in our association. So Any questions for me?
I just have one brief question.
Yeah.
And you said you don't have all the facts, but
Yeah.
my question is, do you really think that the bulk of what's driving the charitable gambling is happening after 1 a.m.? I mean, that's the critical linchpin. First of all, thank you for all the efforts that you do, and I think it's great work that you're doing. I don't want to stifle that in any way, but what I heard was, well, but for bars staying open till 2 o'clock, we'd lose a huge share of revenue. And maybe that's true. That's why I'm asking, do you have any kind of statistical analysis to kind of support that?
We're trying to pull that, but we, when people are selling, it's kind of by box, and we can't count by the hour. 'Cause,
Sure.
I don't know. But I think what my point was, and just talking to the staff that do that kind of thing, is people won't come at all, really. It's not that they, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, so help me if I'm saying this wrong, but like if I was, for instance, out in town with my wife and our friends and buddies, and we're going to go somewhere and play pull tabs and all that, if we knew that someone's going to close at 1 and we're out for a good night, we finally got a babysitter, we probably wouldn't go there. We'd go to somewhere else that we know is going to stay till 2. Right, we wouldn't stay at this location till 1 and then leave and go somewhere else for the last hour. We probably just wouldn't go there in the first place and stay where we could play later.
Sure.
Just a thought.
No, thank you. Council, any questions?
Okay, all right.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, anyone else want to speak to this?
Hi, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Becky Knuth. I'm one of the owners of Little Village Pub. Billy wanted to be here today, but he wrote me a letter to read out loud. Basically, I did talk to Ange beforehand. We didn't want to bore you with, telling you all the exact same things she said. But he kind of hit on one of the topics we were concerned about. Basically, if somebody gets off work at 11 o'clock, they want to go out and have a bite to eat, a couple drinks. Are they going to go to the bar that closes at 1 or just go directly to the bar that closes at 2? So we're not just concerned about that 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. hour. It's going to hurt our 11 to 12, our 12 to 1, and our 1 to 2 hour. So for a small business, that's quite a big impact. Also, I just wanted to say that we've had no issues so far. I mean, we're newish, been a year and a half. We've got a real good clientele. I think we've only had a few police calls, and most of them are because somebody didn't shut the door tight enough and the alarm went off. We do know that, we want everybody to be safe. We plan to keep it that way. If anything ever were to arise, we would take it upon ourselves to address it and close early if need be. For the sake of the customers, the staff, and the community, we wouldn't want any problems arising at any time. So if that crowd started kind of venturing towards us, we would see it coming and we would put a stop to it ourselves. But like I said, it really affects more than just the 1 to 2 hour. It's going to affect pretty much anything after 11, because people just going to choose, like you said, go a block south, go down the road, go to the place where they don't have to get an Uber from one to the other from 1 to 2. They're just going to go there to begin with. So I also just wanted to note, I know you guys were discussing the cannabis sale. I know we have already decided, even if it does become available, my brother, we're never going to do it. We don't want any part of it. It's a whole new mess and insurance and liability, and so just so you know where we stand on that, I'll just let you know ahead of time. But the one other thing is also we have valuable staff. We have great employees that we trust. I'm afraid if their money, their pocketbook gets hurt in all of this as well, they might choose to go somewhere that is open till 2. And then we're out looking for new staff that we can trust as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
How's it going? Bill Foussard from White Bear Country and Rudy's Red Egg Grill. Mayor, staff, councilman, I'm really concerned. In our operations, stuff like that, on weekends, is we do a lot of weddings. And the weddings come back at 12 o'clock. we manage the people in Rudy's and the rooftop. If we close at 1 o'clock, the same thing, they come back, go right to their rooms, start partying and stuff like that. That wrecks all the other guests. I mean, we can control the noise and the people in the bar. It's so much easier than in the room. So I'm really concerned having that, because you have complaints, people noise and stuff, we have to refund the money. We want people happy. Some people come to sleep. Some people come for weddings and celebration and get together and stuff like that. If there's a problem with the bar, we try to do everything right. We go by what you ask for and stuff like that. And we make mistakes. So I'm not saying we're perfect and stuff like that, but we try. And I think a lot of bars do. If there's a bar that's having a challenge, get on them, target them and stuff like that. But take in for people that are really trying. We employ 180 people in our operation for rooms and food and stuff like that. It's a lot of people. Those sales make a lot that we can staff the hotel, but also just taking care of the guests that are coming out here to shop and dine, go to a wedding, go to events and things like, it's all different things what attracts people here to our great town. So I am really concerned just how we handle our guests in the rooms. They go to the rooms, we control them in the bar. If someone's overserved or looking that way, we cut them off. And I know staff has been in there and seen them. We have bartenders been there with us 20 years. We're not messing around. We just want people happy. We want being, managed and stuff like that. And I just have to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
None for me.
Thanks so much. Have a
Thank
great
you.
one. We appreciate all you do.
City Council, Mayor. I'm TJ Ricky, White Bear Bar. The things everybody else was saying, they were spot on. Those are all very important things. Some things I would like to bring light of is public safety is so very important to us and always has been. I work hard with my staff to make sure we are always running a clean and safe show. Over the years, the way things are done in the bar business has changed a lot. 30-some years ago when I started doing this, we never called the police for anything. We just took care of our issues. And that's the way it pretty much worked in that business. And over the years, the police department, which I very much appreciate, and the city council has asked us we want you to call for things, whether it be something very small or you have an issue that needs to be taken care of right away. So we have changed the way we do this. And sometimes some of these calls are it can be as simple as my employee's going to leave at the end of the night. Something looks a little strange outside and they just want a policeman to do a drive-through. I feel as if these police calls are somewhat of a double-edged sword on me now because they're kind of being used against me too. We always want the bar to run smoother. When an issue happens, we always try to learn from it, adjust on it, and make things better. And hopefully these issues never happen again. I think that's all I have. Do we have any questions?
Thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Would anyone else like to speak to this, please?
Hi, everyone. Mayor, members of council. Kristen Cranmer. I manage Kellerman's Event Center, as well as the Alchemist and DBA Four Deuces Saloon on 4th Street. We aren't affected by the 2 a.m. because we only have a 1 a.m. So why am I here? I'm here to support all of them. We have weddings, not as many as we used to, but one of the questions I get asked very often is, where do we go after here? When we leave, we send them out the door at 12 or 12:30, maybe even 1 a.m. A wedding and an event is a super fun time for people to celebrate, bring family and friends from all over. And as my position and also as a huge supporter of downtown White Bear, it's so fun to be able to say, hey, you've got this and you've got this and you've got this place. Enjoy yourselves, have a good time, be safe, all of those things. So I just want to come in support of the fact that these aren't just for the everyday person who hangs out at the bar. This is also for others that come to our community that I send to these bars. I send them to eat, I send them to Keys, I send them to shopping, all of those things that happen here for the good of those 150 to 300 people coming into our town. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this? I'm resisting the temptation to say last call, but but I said it anyway, so there we go. If anyone else, okay, so we're good. All right, we're gonna bring this back to the council. You know, the point of this was to hear from you. Like I said, we've still got a lot of deliberating to do, so I don't want to put council on the spot. Anyone's welcome to share some of their early thoughts. I'll kick things off, and I'll preface it by saying I'm still very much undecided, except to say when we started these original conversations, my thought then, as it is today, is we need to have a really compelling reason to deviate from the status quo. Meaning, if we're going to roll things back to 1 a.m., we need to have it down pretty cold that this is a serious issue that we need to address, and that doing so is going to make a huge step towards improving public safety. I'm not as convinced as I once was. That's why I'm very glad that you all came to speak with us, and we've gone back and forth with police about what the statistics are, and we're still internally kind of grappling with those to try and break down, okay, is it a particular place? Is it a 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. issue? So that's what's rattling around in my head. But again, thank you all for coming here and testifying. I know it's difficult to do, and at least from my chair, I get that this is critical to your business. So just know that from my standpoint, it stems from public safety, which I place above everything else. And it's a slippery slope to say, well, we want to make sure that we walk around in bubble wrap to the expense of having any progress in the community. So I trust the council's good discretion to kind of weigh those two, and I have no doubt that we will. So this is sort of a to be continued issue, and I'll just say that there will be other opportunities to speak to this issue if the council decides to move forward. One way or another, a new liquor ordinance is going to go forward for reasons that are completely independent of the 1 a.m., 2 a.m. analysis. It's a housekeeping issue on some level. So we're going to bring it back and discuss further. But that's where I stand today. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councilmember Walsh.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and really thank you for the process. I think it's a great process. We're a small enough town that before we make a change like this, we can actually speak directly or listen to the people impacted by it. So why not do that? So I really appreciate, without the pressure of an agenda item on the calendar, just to hear, okay, if we do this, what's it going to mean? And I thought we got really good feedback tonight. So I really appreciate the feedback. I feel smarter. More informed.
Don't push it.
Probably not smarter. I feel more informed on this issue. We'll just limit it to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else want to share some thoughts? All right. Well, I'll close by just saying my email, my phone number's on the website, so are the council members. It's an ongoing conversation, so if you forgot something or want to follow up, please don't hesitate to follow up with me and others on the council as we continue to have this conversation amongst ourselves and as we go forward. So thank you all again for being here. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add that any ordinance requires a public hearing as well, so there will be another opportunity, whether this is in there or not, anyway. So there's a first reading, and that's when we have a public hearing on any ordinance, and then there's a second reading before the council adopts it. So you have more opportunity when an ordinance is brought forward, whether or not 1 a.m. is in there or not, I don't know at this point, but you have another opportunity as well.
All right, thank you again. All right, item 10, communication from the city manager. Ms. Crawford, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Senator Heather Gustafson was selected as the League of Minnesota Cities 2024 Legislator of Distinction. She received that last year as well, so want to congratulate her, and I think she'll be visiting a council meeting in the near future, I believe, at her request. So congratulations to Senator Gustafson. The North Campus Community, oh, can you please go back? The North Campus Community Open House is this Thursday, August 29th from 3 to 6 p.m., obviously at the North Campus, just prior to the football game, the first football game of the season. I will be speaking to the Chamber Morning Networking Group on Tuesday, September 3rd at Keys Cafe at 7:30 in the morning. And then we have a ribbon cutting for the Women's Collective on Thursday, September 5th from 3 to 7 p.m. Next slide. And then, of course, we had our big public safety open house and ribbon cutting last week. So there's just a few photos that we captured. There are many more floating out there on social media, or they will be soon. And the Cable Commission did a really nice video that they just put on their social media today. So just thank you for everybody for coming out, and good remarks from Mayor and Chief Peterson and Chief Hager, and I think we had probably 70, 80 people. All the cookies were gone, and there were 300 cookies. But Councilmember Walsh had 2, so. No, it's a beautiful facility, and again, staff really appreciates your support. So that's all I have tonight.
Crawford, and I'll just take this opportunity to compliment police and fire personnel that actually worked the open house. They did a great job, and I received compliments from members of the community that everyone was well informed and, most importantly, really, really excited about the new facility. So good job to police and fire. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, I just announced it, I guess. You might learn a thing or two. Just kidding. Just kidding. Huh? No, I said you might learn a thing or two.
I think I RSVP'd to them that I was going, so just so you know. But
You are?
yeah, I will go.
Good.
I don't know.